Okay, great day. This morning I was looking at YouTube and came across this one, Lady of the Dunes. I had no idea what it was going to be about. But opening it up, it was about this woman that they had found on the beaches, Cape Cod, that had been brutally murdered. And it was 40, 50 years before they finally were able to solve what happened to her. And I had pulled cards and I wanted to see what it would say. And I'll put the link to this. It's an interesting documentary. But the first card I had that came out was fog. And indeed, it was not clear as to what happened. In that area, I'm sure in Cape Cod would be foggy as well. Usually by the beach, it will be kind of foggy terrain. But again, it was not having clarity to this case for like 40 years, 40 or 50 years. So what I thought the most telling was that in the center of it was waterproof, like water off a duck's back, shell, and the jungle. So her killer wound up being somebody that she had married. He had killed before, and for him it was no big deal. Okay, water off a duck's back. And he had a shell, you know, he was surrounded by this falseness that he always had. He was a perennial liar. And again, they figured out that this man had killed other people as well before. Okay, he actually has a book that was called Cooking with Rump Oil. Yeah, Cooking with Rump Oil. And in one part of it, it talks about, it's got one picture in there that you could see was really kind of him. And the book was kind of like in code, but talking about this murder. And one for this lady that said it was so haunting that it was that her eyes of tenderness would see despair. It was something like that. That her innocence would be turned to despair when she figured out that this guy was going to kill her. So haunting. It was just that, oh, you know. So going into it, we had this balance. They wanted to find balance in this case. They wanted the transformation. They wanted to see what took place. It took a long time for this to be discovered and the path forward. So they continued to work on this to figure out who this lady was. And it took many, many years to be able to find out who she was. Due to DNA. I guess they exhumed her body 3 times to try to figure out about who she is. And so between this balance and this, the balance and the waterproof, you know, again, it was the experts were continuing to want to work on this case and solve it. So the last thing was survival. I think this was just her. She was left home, courage. She wanted to strike out on her own. She thought this guy was a friend to her, but this card looks over to the jungle. And they were doing the investigation again into all of this to find out who this woman was that had been brutally murdered. He totally crushed her skull. Her head was almost decapitated, and they'd cut off the hands. So, you know, it was just brutal, brutal, brutal. And it looks like she'd had a difficult time. She had had a child. He was looking for his mother, and some friends of hers raised this child. They just knew she was missing, but they didn't know what took place. And so, she was having courage. She left it, I think it was, they said 19, and wanted to strike out on her own and explore more than what she had as a young person. She was living in Tennessee, and she wanted to see the broader world. Unfortunately, she met with this guy that was a total fraud, and had been married a number of times with, of course, the wives, some of them winding up missing, dead. And so, unfortunately, she wound up also dead. But just that thing, that look of innocence, and the eyes turned to despair. That's what it was. The look of innocence and the eyes turned to despair. It just gives you this creepy, cold feeling right up your back when she is trusting this guy, and then all of a sudden she sees that he is going to murder her. Okay? Just so difficult. But I thought the cards, the center point cards, said it all. That this guy was like water off a duck's back. He could care less. He had a shell around him. Okay? And so that's what he did. The jungle. He was a predator. And killing these people meant nothing to him. Okay? It meant nothing. Water off a duck's back. Okay? And I thought that was just so when you see these cards together, this is somebody in the mind of like a serial killer type of a person, that they've got a shell around them. Usually they can be these serial killers can be quite convincing with people, but they are absolutely cold-blooded. And when they do these murders, to them it means nothing. It's no harm, no foul. Oh well. Okay. So anyway, that's what I got from that. But the book that he wrote, Cooking with Rump Oil, it gives you the chills. When you go through and you see, especially that verse that they feel had to do with this woman, that the look of innocence will turn to despair. So anyway, if you are working with cards, whether it's, in this case I used the Oracle decks, mostly Oracle decks, whether you're using Oracle decks, the Gypsy cards, Tarot, and I used my deck of Lenormand with the Oracle this time. If you're learning it, get yourself a documentary like that, pull the cards, put the cards out, and then you can see how it relates to the events. And so it just aids you in learning more how to read your cards. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you online.